Welcome to CAC Live. Tom DiCamillo, Joe Carrero. Joe still in Costa Rica. JoJo taking over again this week. And this is the weekly show where we talk about Central Arizona College. And Central Arizona College, located in Pinal County. We have locations throughout the county, including 2 new campuses. One will open up here. It's actually open now in the city of Maricopa. The other one will fully open this coming spring in January of 2014. We're excited about that. And one of the things about coming to college is making sure that you're registered. And hey, JoJo, am I on okay? Can't hear myself in the headsets too well. You can hear me okay? That's better. Okay. One of the big things about coming to college is registering, and registering on time. And joining us today is Deb Foster, and we're going to talk about on-time registration. And Deb, I know you've been on the show before, but just tell us about your background and what you do at CAC. That's perfect, JoJo. That's great.
Well, thanks, Tom. I'm glad to be back again.
Back in the man cave.
Back in the man cave. It's a cool place, and today it's really cool compared to outside, so that's for sure. I started working at CAC in 1997, and I worked 97-98 for 2 years as an adjunct teaching speech communications. In 1999, I joined them full-time, and I've been teaching there ever since until last July. And got tapped as an acting assistant dean of communications, mathematics, and learning support. So that's pretty much my history with CAC. I did a little stint in China in an exchange program. That's as a CAC professor exchange over in Shenyang, China. That's the last time I was on here. So.
You had John Pattison on, and you were talking about that whole program. Now, we're going to talk about on-time registration a little bit. I'm sure in China they have on-time registration.
Oh, they're on. You bet.
But explain what the on-time registration is at Central Arizona College and what has changed from what has gone on previously.
Well, I don't know about you, Tom, but this whole idea of late registration has been with us for a long time. When I was in college, and that was a long time ago, you go into a class and you go, oh my gosh, this is too hard. I think I'll drop, and then I'll go find me another class to take, or something of that nature. Or it wasn't a fit, and I would change. And so it's been around for a long, long time. It originated, the whole idea with community colleges and late registration originated from the idea of access. Community colleges are about access, and so bringing in more students, giving them more opportunities to take the classes. So that's sort of where that idea came from in terms of the community college. But what has occurred recently has been the idea that perhaps as we look at we're giving our students access, do we, along with access, owe them as much of an attempt at success as possible? And so what some of the studies have indicated as of recently, and there's been about 30 years of study done on late registration, is that indeed it's pointing to, and anecdotally we as instructors sort of knew this, that students that came in late were less likely to be successful in class.
Why does that happen? Why are they less likely to sit?
Well, they're behind. They start behind. They sometimes are at-risk students enter late, and they are the ones that really do need help. Even when our really good students start and they come in late, they may not have their textbook. They end up being behind on their assignments. They may not even get caught up on their assignments. There's a whole slew of reasons. They miss the initial activities in class sometimes. And really and truthfully, for instructors, what had developed is also a culture of late registration, which was, there's no reason to really even start class for about a week because, people are coming and they're going, and it was just a perpetual culture that was not breeding success for students. And so because of that, CAC attempted sort of an on-time registration. Now, this was not a new idea by any means. It's not something that CAC just invented. As I'd indicated, some of the studies and the research that had gone on had indicated that perhaps this practice that we are doing of late registration is not benefiting students and their abilities to achieve. Other best practice across the country, if you look at some of our community colleges that are leading innovators in different areas, they have adopted on-time registration. Even more colleges are looking at adopting on-time registration. Some of our sister colleges in the state will be doing, community colleges will be doing on-time registration coming up. And really, the whole focus is on student and student success. While we want to continue to give students access, we want them to have success. Success then leads to completion. And of course, there's a big push now on looking at the completion agenda in the college, because it's one thing to get in the college, it's another thing to be able to be successful and then completing the agenda. So
let's take it through it. In the past, if you were coming to CAC, and I always noticed this, having gone to a 4-year institution, there was a deadline where you had to register by. After that, you paid a premium fee, a late fee to do it, and then there was a cutoff point. At CAC, it seemed like that there was this rush of hundreds, maybe 1,000 people that would register that right before class started, or were getting classes a week after school started. And not only does that, like you said, the success rate, it also puts sort of an inordinate amount of pressure on staff to manage that all at one time when you could be helping students gradually over the course of time.
That's very true. And so really a culture had developed, and that is, we open up registration for fall classes anyway, starting sometime in March, or 1st of April. And so you've got this whole time to build a schedule, maybe make changes in a schedule as you need it. You've got this time, but students have come to understand, I can go do it last minute, and then even if I miss the deadline, I got another week that I can deal with it. There'll be people that'll drop out, and then maybe I'll get a class I want. And so, yes, and so what it was doing was putting in an inordinate amount of pressure on frontline registration, on advisors. People would be lined up, and really this was not giving them the opportunity to really advise and do the best that they could for them. And so really with on-time registration, which really, if we look at the definition for it, this really means that you are not permitted to register for a class once it's already met. If it's met, you can't register for that class. So if the class meets at 9 o'clock on Monday morning, then you've got to find an alternative class that has not met if you're still looking to register late.
As part of that, it's one thing where people might say, well, okay, class is met, I've only missed one day, but it's not like missing a class in the middle of a semester when you know the other students, you know the professor, you miss that first day or that second day, you don't know what book you're supposed to have, you're totally lost. It seems like it's one of those cumulative things. You're behind to start.
That's
that is much more difficult than missing a class because you're sick and having to make it up in the middle of the semester.
That's right. And in fact, that is really the beginning of the development of the class culture. Every single class develops its own little subculture, and that is composed of the instructor, the students in that class, and the dynamics of that class and how the class will function. So it's almost like you come into a class and you're not part of the in-group, you're part of the out-group now. And, although I may teach every single class I've ever taught, I teach the same information. Every class is uniquely different and is its own little bitty subculture. We have different dynamics all the way around. And when you come in late, you're just not part of that initial culture that is developing. You're sort of an outsider. I'm
trying to remember the classes because I took communications in college, and was it group communications or dynamic communications? It's interesting because you're right. If you show up a day or two late, those relationships of the students are already forming. Mm-hmm. So now you come in, it's almost like you're an outsider, and then your focus is, okay, I got to get caught up. So really, by the time you start that communication process of becoming part of that collective in a class, it could be a week and a half later, and now you're really you're not part of the group.
That's correct. You'll notice that just little things happen when you come into a class. People choose their seats, and then it becomes my seat. You come in late. Are you sitting in somebody's seat?
You get the evil eye.
Those kinds of things. People have chosen, if it's a group class with a lot of group activity, they've already chosen the tables they'll be sitting in, the groups. And of course, it's different in every single subject matter and things of that nature. But the bottom line really is that the research indicates that for whatever reason, it decreases students' persistence and student success. And we don't have all the evidence as to why that is, but we have enough to know there is a direct correlation.
It seems like the evidence would be, and I could be wrong, but somewhat easy to gather. You look at everybody who started on time, everybody that came in late, and track them where they have success. And it's probably clear cut in some of those situations.
Yeah, and really and truly, most instructors have known this anecdotally. We know that, but very few of us have had the time to just sit down and research that and say, okay, here were my late starters, here were my completers that started on time. But some of our research that has been done, there was a research done in 2007 and looked at success rate in different classes this was a national study, of course, between students that started on time and didn't start on time. So, for instance, in the math and sciences, they found that those that started on time, there was still a 17% unsuccessful rate in terms of passing the class or being successful. But for those that did not start on time, there was a 44% unsuccessful rate.
It's like 2.5 times the rate.
That is correct. And then you look at the social sciences, and they found that for that area, if they started on time, only about 7% were unsuccessful. Late, 41% were unsuccessful.
Wow.
So, it sort of would push me now, if I were still in the classroom, to do my own little statistics now to see what had happened. I wished I'd done that.
You taught the social sciences. That's 6 times. That's six times the amount of students that are unsuccessful that didn't start on time compared to the ones that did start on time. When you look at how this culture, how do you change this culture? And you're smiling, but you have to change the culture first, because new students coming in, ones that are in high school now, by the time next year rolls around, it'll be like, oh, that's what I got to do.
Yeah,
and that's it.
Yeah, we've really worked hard on the communication game plan, and your department has helped us tremendously on that, I'll have to say. But we have we looked at really, we felt that communication was a really big piece of, if you're going to attempt to do something as difficult as change a culture. And the groups that we looked at, as you mentioned, we look at the brand new student, and then we look at the most difficult, which is the students that we have right now. This is not what they're used to. This is not how it's been done. And so we've tried to get the word out to them best that we can. And some of the things that we have done have included, we've sent postcards to every single one of them that are coming. We have digital signage. We tried at the end of last spring semester. All the instructors were given handouts to give to each student face to face at that time, and said, "This is what's happening. Get your classes now and get them while you can." And so we felt like maybe the face-to-face, first-hand, right in the classroom contact was the first place to start. So we did it that way. Then with the new incoming students, we've done things such as included it in their admissions letter, that this is the way we do business, and this is what is happening. Then, of course, student affairs has been marvelous in this area in terms of in their orientation. All our literature is there. They have a PowerPoint slide or two that talks about on-time registration with the students that attend.
You had to have buy-in from everybody at CAC for you to accomplish this. I know Veronica Duran, the registrar, across the board, recruiters, everybody had to have buy-in.
This was one of the most rewarding activities that I've participated in at CAC, because what we did was we knew that student services and student affairs were really focused on helping students, and they know their job and they know it well. We know that in academics, we are focused on we're student oriented, and we want our students to succeed, and we do our job well. But what was happening to a large extent was academics didn't know what student services were doing, really what their job is. Student services didn't really know how we approach and how we do the first week of classes. And so I thought, we're all trying to do the very best that we can at CAC for our students, but maybe we can do the best for our students if we bring voices and representatives from all sides of the house. You know, we bring the registrar in, we bring advisors in, we bring a financial aid officer in, we bring division chairs in, we bring deans in, we bring faculty members in that for day-to-day classes, as well as faculty members that teach classes that are sort of unique, the science classes that are like 4-hour classes and labs, creative arts classes that have unique things like choir, and they might need somebody needs a tuba player or something, and they have unique needs. So we worked for about 6 months as a task force working on this, trying to just cover every nook and cranny in terms of making this the most successful, always starting our meetings with being student focused. And I learned more about everybody's job. And I was like, wow, that's why you do that, huh? And then some others were like, from a student affairs, like, wow, that's why you do that. And it was really a learning experience for all of us that came together. But it was a breaking down of the silos of student affairs and academic affairs, and I really hope we continue a lot of that as we move forward at CAC. But I think that within itself is a culture change.
You're listening to CAC Live on KQCK in the Santan Valley. Tom DiCamillo, we're joined here with Deb Foster. We're talking about on-time registration at Central Arizona College, and it is a culture shift. So for those of you registering, you need to register now. Once classes start, if your class that you want has already started, you will not be able to register. You will not be able to go to professors and ask them to give you access to a class.
That's
correct?
Right. There's no such thing as an override anymore.
See, and that's important because I remember being in college during that drop ad period. You're running around getting professor signatures, but that's pretty much
that's done.
That's done.
No more overrides.
So, in a sense, with this, if the class has begun, they really can't go to professor at all. Correct? And get asked to get in. So that's a huge culture change. Was there a point in the research, was there a point across the country that people started looking and saying, we really need to move in this direction? Were there things that all of you saw that, it was time to really kind of change the culture?
Well, I don't know in terms of, one day in, America the light bulb went off or anything, but I do know that some of the real innovators, some that lead us in community college work and best practices, were looking at this around 2006, 2007. There were a couple that are almost on their 10th year. Those of us that have started relatively new, and what we're learning from our predecessors, they've had to tweak the system many times, and so that gives us the opportunity to be proactive on some of the problems that could have arisen. But like I said, they've had 30 years of research on this, looking at student success, and of course there are a lot of variables when we talk about student success, but they were discovering that this was one of the major ones because this seemed to be more rampant we were in four-year colleges, but at the community college level, this just really was part of the culture.
Do you think part of the culture was, as well as that, when you look at the mission of community colleges, there's a lot of different reasons that people go, a lot of different age groups, so the culture is almost to be helpful all the time. Let's get you in, let's get you started. Four-year institutions, a lot of them we're going to select the best students to come to our institution. 2-year, it's like, no, let's get you in. We want to get you in, get you out of that cycle of a job that's a dead-end job. And then, they get into that culture, they're registering late for classes, and then they're not successful.
I think that's a really good point, because I know even as a teacher, when I would know that this was perhaps not the best thing for this student, I didn't want to tell the student no. I'll do whatever I can to help you. And I think that most people on campus, our advisors, our registrars, our faculty members, that's what we're there for. We want our students to succeed, but it's sort of almost like a parent kind of thing, sort of like tough love. I mean, we want you to come, but we want you to be successful. And if this is a hindrance, and this is something that we can do, another piece of this is we have to be responsible for our decisions. And one of the things that's happening these days is we've got employers saying, you guys are cranking out some really good skill-oriented people for us, but as far as some of the soft skills in terms of decision making, coming to work on time, not being late, calling when you're not going to be here, just some really what they call soft skills. You're not doing such a great job, dear education world. And so I think we listen to our employers that were talking to us as well. And students have to be held responsible for their decisions as well. And that's part of the culture shift as well.
One of the things coming from the field of the sports information field, athletic communications, and being in PR, is what I have seen is a sort of this troubling decrease in writing ability across the country. Students write like they text, they write like they Facebook, and although I just used Facebook as a verb there, so which is probably not the best thing.
It happens to all of us.
But it's you're right. And I think a lot of it is you get those. It's one sort of small symptom of you get into a class late, and you're just trying to catch up and get the credit, and not really getting the skill that you need, like you said, some of the soft skills, some of those kind of basic type of things.
Well, the other troubling piece with this is not only being successful in class, and of course this is not being successful too, but the statistics or the percentages that I just gave you had to do with completion of the class. But what you will also find is that students that start late are more likely to drop out of the class and never finish it at all. So that anecdotally we knew that too, but we also have some statistics on that as well. We found that with late registration, 35% of those that registered late as a student were retained to the next semester, only 35%. And then we found that on-time registration, 80% were retained and continued on to the next semester. So it's one thing to give somebody access, and then they just drop their whole class load, and that's significant.
35%?
35% in terms of retention. This was a study that was done by Smith and Street, and this was done in 2002. This study was. And what they found was, that's right, 35% that registered late went on to the next semester. So do the math. 65% just dropped.
So it's almost like they never felt integrated into college life. Mm-hmm. They go, they get there, they show up, take the class, they look at the watch for an hour, look at the clock for an hour, hour and a half, it'd be interesting, how successful were they? Did they get A's and B's? Did they just barely get the credits? Mm-hmm. Were they ever really invested into it? Which that I always thought in college the best thing, and having dealt with a lot of freshmen, is getting them acclimated and getting them invested into wanting to be there. They broke away from home, and then they were really kind of there to be. It was like their home. College became their home. They loved it. And the ones that never, kind of got invested in this is kind of testimony to that. They started late. They're never really kind of part of the group. Everything we've talked about, they don't really want to be there. They don't come back.
That's the case. And so, I know it almost seems harsh, particularly for us as instructors, that truly you hit it right on the nail right on the head. We have this urgency to help, this need
nurturing,
this need to help.
We all do. Yep.
But it's a tough shift for the instructors as well.
Talk about, and what people that are listening out in the community, they'll hear, okay, on-time registration. It's we're doing this for the success of the student and everything. But if a student is unsuccessful, there's a lot of, I don't want to say baggage, but there's a lot of things when a student drops out of a class. There's a lot of things that go with that. They fail a class. It impacts their ability to get financial aid in the future if they're not matriculating. It really, there's a whole gamut of things that happen.
This is correct. And of course, I do want to reiterate that we understand that there are variables in these statistics. Sure. That's there are a whole gamut of reasons people leave. But if there's one that we can do something about that make it a little bit less. But you're correct. If somebody drops out of a class, never does anything about it, an F shows up on their transcript, then they've got to very likely, if they're going to be on academic probation, can they get back in? They've dropped below the level of a number of class hours they need to continue their financial aid or to get their financial aid. It's just really makes it even tougher to continue and to complete. And if we can keep that in mind when we look at on-time registration, let's start them on time. Let's help them be successful. Let's get them to completion. It's a tough road if you just keep having to claw your way back through the system.
It's funny because the simple thing is register on time, because when you go to college, and we've talked about this many times with many different CAC employees that have been on here, there's always barriers to college. They could be financial, they could be social, they could be geographical, and when you register on time, it seems so simple. But if you don't, and you fail a class, you don't do anything about it, affects your financial aid, all of a sudden you've just put up 2 or 3 barriers to come back.
That's correct.
And it's a very simple thing. In your years of teaching, you've talked about the research, but you must be able to see students that have registered late and see it yourself.
That's what I was talking about, that most of us sort of intuitively, anecdotally know it, because we've watched the student that comes in late. When we talk about late registration, for us, that's about a week. But because of the culture, sometimes you would find a student wanting to come in 2 weeks late. Because, I didn't have my book, there was this, so you kept being able to push the envelope because it was there. You could do it up for a week. Oh, there's a vacancy. I get in? I'll try really hard. And then you'll just shake your head during the semester when, about halfway through, they don't call, they don't write, they don't. I've totally lost contact with them, and they're gone. Even if we email, we reach out to them, and they've disappeared, or they persist and they stay with it, and they're just not making the cut and the grade. So I would suspect if you had a room of instructors in here with various subject matter, they would say, yeah, I don't have the statistics on it, but I bet in their head they would say, anecdotally, I know it's not good.
Talk about from now the other side, from a professor standpoint, when you're planning and you get your class list. And I can imagine there were times when a professor maybe had 15 in a class, got it all set, and then 5 more show up. Mm-hmm. That's got to be really challenging because it's not just doesn't impact. Let's just say, okay, that's your job. You're going to prepare and be flexible to do that, but that does impact the professor. But it then also impacts all the other students in that class.
Well, let me give you an illustration of that works really well. So my tendency was to wait until as close to the end of registration as possible to build my syllabus for public speaking. Because in a public speaking class, every student has to give a certain number of speeches. So you have to, in your class outline and your class calendar, provide, depending on the number of students, a certain number of days for students to give speeches. So let's say I was so fortunate just to have 15 students. Let's make it more realistic. I've got 20 students in a public speaking class. Okay. And so on best case, little bitty speeches, maybe I could get them all done in 5 per day. So maybe 4 days I could get it all in.
Okay.
All of a sudden, I've got 5 more. That's another day. Well, that doesn't sound like, 1 day. But when you give 4 different speeches, we're talking now 4 days built into the syllabus that's got to happen. And while that doesn't sound like much, it cuts down on the instruction time for the students in terms of how to do those speeches. And so you're right. And then many of our classes involve things such as group work and formulating those groups and how many days those groups will present. So it totally rearranges your whole syllabus. And I can't tell you the number of times I've had to have an addendum. I say, pull off that outline sheet. Here's your new outline. And it would be because I'd have to rewrite it because we had added students. Yeah.
So you're looking like the drop at that period of time. You come in and say you were meeting. What do most classes meet? 2 days a week now?
Right.
All right, so 2 days a week. Let's say Monday, Wednesday. And now, as a professor, you'll know who's in your class coming on Monday.
That's right.
All right. So, but in the past, you wouldn't know your final class until the next Monday because you could be getting people up until the end of, in the past, right to the end of that whole week.
Yes, and then I'd have those that would go, public speaking class? Oh, you give speeches in here? Oh, I'm dropping. That was always sort of interesting little twist. But yeah, then you get people that are in this wasn't what I thought it was, and they drop, and then in come some new ones, and then, or somebody wants to bring their friend along, or, it's just, you don't know. And so that's the culture piece for the teacher that was also there, was like, almost like I just give up that first week. Let's do get to know you activities, which is important. And of course, the late student doesn't get to participate on those. But as far as our motto that goes with this, learning begins day one, there was no such thing as learning begins day one because we didn't know who was in our classes, and we were just going to repeat. And if we didn't repeat, we knew we were leaving a whole bunch of people behind. And
so the first week was really almost limbo.
Yeah, it's limbo.
And then I'll throw on top of that trying to go over and get books that you need, which is another challenge in itself. If the book isn't there, they run out of books. Well, how does that impact? Do professors say, I know there's going to be 15 people in this class, or 20 people in the class, you're going to order 20, 22 books. Now there's 25.
Well,
does that happen?
Well, it happens, but we order our books, almost, 6 or 7 months in advance. Yeah. So it's always just sort of a guessing game there. So we always try to sort of over-guess for that piece. But what happens is they need their book in order to do things like take the quizzes or do the class activities that we're going to do. And when they come into the class and they don't know, they don't have their book, And they're more likely to have run out of the books by that point in time. So you're trying to go ahead and give activities. You're trying to go ahead and give quizzes. I can't take the quiz. I don't have my book. Like, if they're late. So it's not a win-win for anybody.
You're listening to CAC Live on KQCK in the Santan Valley. Tom DiCamillo along with Deb Foster. We're talking about on-time registration, and you can register online and on time by going to centralaz.edu. Has there been any kind of, I don't want to say backlash, but what kind of comments have you received from the community, from students?
Yes, I've had some. We've had some issues that have arisen. I would say first, I would suggest that faculty like the ability to say who and who is not going to be in their class, and so we've tried to let it be known, and we hope we've done an okay job, that we're really not taking that ability away. This is something that really most faculty had asked for, and this was the attempt to do it. From the student point of view, we've had people say, come to me with such issues such as, well, I don't care what you say. When you read the description in the course catalog, it was a harder class than I thought it was going to be, and now I get in there, it's too much, it's too hard, and now you're telling me I can't get into another class. Well, some of the things that we've tried to do is to indicate to students that say, I really don't know what the class is like. It's almost like going class shopping. I need to go in there and test the waters a little, and I get that. And those are good students, not necessarily, good students want to test the water so they can get some good grades. But what we've tried to do is provide opportunities. You may be late for this class, but you're early for the next one that's going to start. So one of the things that is still in process that faculty are working on is strategic scheduling. So for the most part, we have 16-week classes, 8-week classes, and some other courses have different week classes. But we want to look at, is there a way to strategically schedule and have, let's say, a speech class that starts on the first day and then one that starts 2 weeks later. So they're not, the time frame would be different. Well, we haven't done that yet, but that's something we want to do and want to work on. You're late, but you're early for this one, so let's get you registered and signed up for it.
And it goes back to about completion and having success in the classroom. Does this ratchet up the importance of advising?
It does.
To make sure that, because I could see, all right, you have your general ed classes that everybody takes, but when you get into those programs where you're getting your 2-year degree in or your certificate in, it becomes really important. Like I could see somebody like Dan Bush, who does the EIT program, and there's very specific classes and probably very specific time frames you take them. So somebody like that will be working with the students in that program to say, okay, here's what we're looking at when we're scheduling them. Now we're going to open it. Schedule now. Don't wait until the next semester. You need to get going. And that goes with the retention. They're already in. They sign up. They're going for it. So you see advisors being very important now. Not that they always were important.
They've always been important,
but it's ratcheted up at a different level right now because of this on-time registration.
Well, and I believe what will happen if once we get settled into this process, this frees advisors up to do what advisors do best, and that's advise rather than having to pump out panic schedules right at the end. Yeah. So hopefully it really is going to be a win-win for everyone. It's going to be a shift. It's a change. Change is not always easy. And we've got lots of changes happening at CAC. So
there's a lot, especially with coming up with opening of new campuses, with the college being open Monday through Thursday, which will be. There may be some classes still on Friday the fall, but as we move forward, it'll be Monday through Thursday. Then it also behooves the college to, in terms of those. You said it was funny. You said it's almost like forum shopping or of classes. It really is important to make sure that descriptions of those classes are spelled out so students can understand and that the advisors understand when they're advising the students.
I think it's really important for everybody to make sure that we represent our, our descriptions of classes are as accurate as possible. The amount of work that's going to be required in the courses as uniform as possible. It's asking us all to step up to the plate and do the very best job we can do for our students, which we've been doing. We just got to consider we've got this new component in, and the one thing I know from being at CAC this long is that this is a college that cares about students and will do whatever it takes to help students be successful. And
CAC, what I've noticed, and I'm there now 6.5 years I've been at CAC, is the creativity, the ability to look at something and be more sort of dynamic than a four-year institution. I remember trying to watch the curriculum process at the four-year university I worked at, and I swear dinosaurs were around when we started it, and they still, hadn't gotten there. But CAC moves, fairly quickly to meet the changes. And the bottom line with this on-time registration, it's designed to help. It
is. It's designed to help, and it depends on what perspective you're looking from. I had a student approach and says, well, this looks like it's just done because it's easier for faculty, and in essence it helps faculty, but the focus has always been on the student. So and that's part of the creativity and innovation that we are hoping to see, and I think will happen as we look at some of this strategic scheduling, because it's all about helping the students. It's not that we're trying to keep you out of a class. We're trying to help you be successful in a class. So we're going to give you another class. Here it is, 2 weeks later or something of that nature.
It's funny, and it actually does. Yeah, in some ways it makes it much better planning-wise, financially, for the institution to be responsible, because you can really allocate your resources in the proper areas. So it really does make it easier for students, because they start on time. They can have the success. CAC's able to locate those classes, have a better idea of where they could put them in the new campuses, which might be a closer commute for students. So there's a lot of different ways. It's funny. There was a story I was thinking of when I was in college. For whatever reason, I decided my parents had a piano, so I took a keyboard class. I'm not musically inclined at all. But the description wasn't great, and it was a half a credit. I took it. I just wanted to do something, and I'm sitting in the back of the room. I'm like, okay, they're going to teach you how to play piano. Why not? It's half credit. I'll have some fun with it. And I'm in the back, and it's the first day of class. Well, they're talking about on-time registration. One after another students. They were playing classical.
Oh.
And I'm getting horrified as it's coming closer and closer to me, because I got chopsticks is basically all I can do. And there was a case where I thought it was one thing and something else. And when it came to me, I got up, I went, later, dude, I don't know any of this, and I left. But it goes back to I went back and looked at the description, and it was really, it said learning piano. I thought that's what it was. Yeah. But it was learning piano for music majors, which was a whole different kind of thing. So it really does on CAC side, and it sounds like CAC has that. And the students right now, the biggest ones that are going to be impacted are the students that have been taking classes.
Yeah, and I think another good point with what you've just brought up is it's important that students read the descriptions. Our course outlines are on the website, so you can sort of go and see what's going to be on the course. Yeah. When you said that was sort of interesting, because you can tell by the accent. I used to teach in Texas, so I teach everybody out here in Arizona how to have Texas accent in my classes. But I was also the debate coach, and so one of the things we did, we had a 1-hour course called Forensic Activities. And Forensic Activities was actually the traveling speech team. It was debate and competitive speeches and things like that. I had a couple of students within the 16 years that I was there sign up thinking it had something to do, with
Quincy. That's exactly. When I got to admit, when I was at college and I saw that, I'm like, what is that? I don't want to do that.
I really thought it had to do
Yeah.
with, and
Yeah.
that's the exact show
So,
that was running
right,
about the
that
time.
Yep, exactly. Yeah,
As
I know exactly what you're talking about.
students, before they come to college, really need to do their homework. They
Yeah.
need to look at the course descriptions, look up the course outlines. It's all out there for them. And I know some of our students really enjoy self-advising, but we've got great advisors, and with on-time registration, as you've pointed out, getting that map and that plan to complete and not put up all those road barriers for you by having to not having the plan in place is really, really going to be important.
And that's in the case of me taking that piano class. If I had followed through and read that it was for music majors, I would have understood that I needed a whole lot more experience being in that. So you're right. You really do. And if you read those descriptions and you don't understand them, that's where you can go ask. And I think CAC is really good about that.
Yeah. Never be afraid to ask anybody a question, because at CAC, everybody really wants to help, and it's a friendly, helpful environment. And this, to some people, seems unfriendly, but please keep in mind that the ultimate is for the success of the student.
Isn't there, and maybe it's anecdotal, but when a student isn't successful, and let's just take, I'm sure, obviously some of them are getting financial aid, and then that impacts that. But I'm sure there's students that sign up late that are paying their own way in cash, or they get a loan, and now they've just blown money that they're probably working to try to go to school, and there's a financial component there that it directly impacts them.
Absolutely. So if we look at a change that comes about, whether it's on-time registration or any other change that comes down the pike, we can't immediately go to somebody's doing this just to put a roadblock up in my life. They're really, what are the reasons? And just sitting here talking with you have, giving me more fuel for the fodder. I mean, really, because when we start looking at it, not only from the research point of view, but from, just as you said, blowing the money, not having your plan, losing financial aid, all sorts of pieces that go with it.
It's so now if people have questions about on-time registration, they've listened to the show, there might be parents, what can they do? Can they call? Can they stop into any of the campuses or centers and sit down with someone and just ask the question?
Absolutely. This is like my 15th time, maybe 14th. No, it's 15 now. My 15th time to actually go on the road with this show about on-time registration. So I personally would be happy to answer any questions about it. But the other part that we did in our campaign to communicate was we tried to communicate across the campus about how this works. And so hopefully on every level there's somebody that's there that knows how this works and can help you out and answer questions about on-time registration. The main thing to remember, the benefits are there for you. If you register on time, you're more likely to get the class you want. You're more likely to get it in the time slot that you want. You're more likely to get the professor that you want.
The location that you want.
The location that you want. You don't have the hassles that you have waiting up until the last minute. Now is the time to register.
I'm wondering, Deb, if and again, it's probably not something that statistics would be kept, but I wonder how often at CAC somebody comes in, waits to do this last minute registration, and they go to, say, Signal Peak. They maybe live in Coolidge or Florence, and it's full. But they say, okay, we have an opening in Superstition Mountain campus. You can go up there. And they're like, I need the class, do it. And now their commute is double, which is another roadblock that they've just thrown up because there's a cost, there's just a geography. That's got to be, I wonder how often. I'm sure that has happened over the course of time.
I have no idea, but that's certainly a possibility. And I would suspect people that are ready to get the show on the road and get it over with are willing to put that extra hour commute in if it means I'm about to get done and over with. So I just can't urge people enough to go ahead, get registered. Advisors are working hard right now. If you have a chance, also go to orientation if you're a new student.
How important is that to go to orientation?
I think it's extremely important because it gives you your roadmap to success on campus. I mean, it's a different environment. It's not only is it a different culture, it's a different environment. And really and I don't have the statistics on it either, but going hand in hand with this on-time registration, one of the variables they've been looking at is the more likely of success for those students that go to orientation. So they're sort of like twin sisters in terms of helping with success rates. It's
funny. This is one of those things where when you talk about it, it seems punitive at first, but really when you're looking at it, it's actually meant to be helpful. It's designed to increase success. It's designed to, better serve the students in the classroom experience, save them money. And a lot of it is we all see it. There might not be that sort of quantitative, here's this, but you can see it every day. You see students that there's some of the students I've gotten to know that they're there and then they disappear. And that's really sad because you see that they're talented and they just need to get that success, and then they can kind of get out of what they're doing and go on to something they really want to do.
And I can't remember who I heard this from, but one of the things that I would suspect is true, some of the researches indicate what's the number one factor that kept you on campus, or why are you here? What kept you going? Somebody knew my name.
I would say that's pretty dead on.
Somebody knew my name, so I felt like I was a part of something. So when we look at success, getting involved in the culture of the classroom on the get-go, going to orientation, and becoming that within itself is making connections right there. There's somebody there that's going to know your name by the time you leave. You're going to make connections at that point. And they'll know your name.
It's funny because the biggest thing, I came from a family where nobody had ever gone to college at all. And to this day, I'm the only one. And what kept me there was being in the student services area and student activities, being involved with the college radio station, the college newspaper. Got involved with the very first week because I could have easily gone home. And all of a sudden everybody knew my name from VPs, associate VPs, to all the people in the business office of the student services side of the house. And I felt part of it. Felt so much I went back and worked there 16 years.
Yeah.
But it's true. It's true. If you know somebody, I know we play pickup basketball, and there's a couple of young men that started taking classes. They were in the community. They come over, just found us, started playing, and now they're CAC students taking. And sometimes we're like, "Where were you? We're playing ball. I got class." Oh, okay. But it's about being part of something.
Right. And really, when you say they know my name, that's just a synonymous term for somebody cares.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. You're right. Well, Deb, we've gone through the whole hour.
Really?
We always tell people this goes fast. So registration now for the fall semester.
This is correct.
Is ongoing right now, but the deadline is in early August. School starts in mid-August. You could check online.
That's right.
And you want to make sure that you get registered for the classes before they start. So don't wait for that drop ad week.
That's absolutely the case. And if you have the chance, go see an advisor and help get that game plan down.
That's exactly right. And, you could still, like you said, if the class hasn't met yet, you can get in, but don't wait that long. If your class starts on the Wednesday of the first week, don't stress yourself out.
That's right.
Get your plan so you know where you're going, where your classes are. And if you've never been to CAC, I always encourage people, whatever campus you're going to, go walk around. Go to the orientation, but then go walk around yourself.
That's right.
Walk through the buildings, just kind of get a feel for where you're. I used to do that, walk around and find out where my classes were, because the first day I didn't want to be running around. Parking was too hard at a state university. Plus, it was $100, but that's a different story. And we don't charge for parking, by the way.
Absolutely.
So, well, Deb, we always love having you on the show. We'll have you back again. I know you're still involved with many things at CAC, and we appreciate you talking about this on-time registration.
Thanks, Tom, and thanks for the opportunity, and thanks for everything your department does to help promote all of our changes and our attempts at student success. Appreciate it.
Well, we appreciate it, too. Appreciate that. So for Deb Foster, for Joe Carrero, for JoJo, I'm Tom DiCamillo. We'll catch you in 2 weeks. Next week's the 4th of July. In 2 weeks, Joe will be back into the studio, and we will be talking more about Central Arizona College on CAC Live.
More music 24 hours a day.
Got termites?